They say you can tell the story of a people by what they ate and how they made it through the hard times. In kitchens that were small but full of laughter, where cast iron skillets outlasted generations, Black families turned scraps into suppers and suppers into stories. These weren't restaurant meals or recipes from books. They were lessons in strength, patience, and love. Every pot that simmered on the stove carried the sound of history, the rhythm of spoons, the hiss of hot grease, and the voices that said, "We may not have much, but we have each other." From cornbread and collard greens to red beans, catfish, and yams, these dinners built more than bodies. They built community. So tonight we go back to those tables, back to the flavors that fed faith, and the meals that built Black America. 1. Cornbread and collard greens. They called it supper, not dinner, because dinner sounded like something rich folks had. In small wooden kitchens across the South, pots of collard greens simmered slow, seasoned not with butter or cream, but with the bones left over from last week's ham. The air was thick with steam and gospel music leaking through the radio. Cornmeal, salt, a splash of buttermilk, stirred by hand and baked until golden. That skillet cornbread came out crackling, edges crisp, center soft. Kids would crowd the table with chipped bowls and tin spoons, waiting for that first slice. They'd break off a piece, dip it into that green, smoky pot liquor, and for a moment, no one was poor. They were full, together, alive. Back then, no one called it soul food. It was just food that kept the soul alive. 2. Fried bologna sandwiches. Sometimes the only meat in the house came wrapped in thin, red plastic. Bologna, cheap, salty, but loved like steak. Mama would slice it halfway through so it wouldn't bubble up in the pan, and that hiss, that first sizzle on the skillet, sounded like victory. A slice of bread, a dab of mustard, and if you were lucky, a piece of cheese. The kids would run outside, sandwich in hand, and the smell followed them down the block like a flag of pride. It was americanhistory about the ingredients. It was about what you could make when you had almost nothing. A fried bologna sandwich meant you'd made it through another day. And that was enough reason to smile. 3. Red beans and rice. Monday was wash day, so while the women scrubbed clothes out back, red beans simmered slow on the stove. The beans cooked all day, just water, salt, and maybe a piece of sausage if times were good. By evening, the smell filled the neighborhood, and people knew what was for dinner without even asking. Rice stretched the pot, feeding 5 mouths where there was only enough for 3. But nobody complained, because it wasn't tea about how much you had, it was about how well you made it last. That bowl of red beans and rice carried a story of patience, of turning ordinary ingredients into something that tasted like love. 4. Smothered pork chops. When you couldn't afford the best cuts, you learned to love the tough ones. Floured, fried, and drowned in gravy until they turned tender as hope. You could hear the skillet pop and hiss, smell the onions caramelizing down to sweetness. It took time, slow time, the kind that makes you forget how hard the world was outside. Served over rice, smothered pork chops were more than dinner. They were proof that with a little work and a lot of faith, even the hardest things could soften. 5. Chicken and dumplings. This was the meal for cold nights and tired hearts. Chicken, bones and all, boiled until the broth turned gold. Flour rolled on the counter, cut into little squares, dropped into the bubbling pot. The kitchen filled with steam, the air heavy with warmth. No one measured anything. They cooked by feel, by memory. When those dumplings puffed up soft and thick, everyone gathered close, bowls steaming in their hands. It wasn't just a dish. It was comfort in a world that didn't offer much. A reminder that love, real love, was something you could taste. 6. Neck bones and gravy. When the butcher tossed out the bones, folks saw opportunity. They'd take those neck bones home, wrapped in paper, rinse them clean, and drop them into a pot of onions, salt, and patience. For hours, that pot simmered, steam curling up the kitchen walls. By supper time, the meat fell right off the bone, and the gravy it left behind could make a poor man's plate feel like a king's. Served over rice or mashed potatoes, neck bones taught a simple truth. The best meals didn't come from what you bought, but from what you brought out of nothing. 7. Sweet potatoes and biscuits. Before dessert was store-bought, sweetness came straight from the earth. Sweet potatoes baked in the coals of a wood stove, their skins blackened, their insides soft and glowing. When they came out, the house filled with a smell so warm it could hush a crying baby. Served beside homemade biscuits, fluffy, golden, brushed with a bit of bacon grease, it was more than a meal. It was a moment of peace in a week full of struggle. A way to taste gratitude even when the world didn't give much reason for it. 8. Fried catfish. Friday's Friday was the end of the week. Payday for some, prayer day for most. Down by the river, men fished with quiet hope, casting lines not just for food, but for peace. By evening, the catch hit the skillet. Catfish coated in cornmeal, frying in oil that popped like applause. Hush puppies browned on the side, and laughter filled the room like a hymn. For one night, everyone ate together. Family, neighbors, friends, and the river gave them something to celebrate. 9. Hoppin' John. New Year's Day always began with a pot of Hoppin' John. Black-eyed peas for luck, rice for wealth, and a ham hock for flavor and faith. They said if you ate it on January 1st, you'd never go hungry the rest of the year. But even when the year turned hard, folks still made it, because tradition fed the spirit. Each bite was a promise, a quiet belief that things could get better, and that hope, like rice and beans, could stretch far if you tended it right. 10. Pig's feet stew. This was a dish for those who refused to waste a thing. Pig's feet, cleaned and boiled slow, seasoned with vinegar, onions, and spice. The broth turned thick and rich, the meat gelatinous and tender. Not pretty to look at, but powerful to taste. Families would sit around the table with cornbread and hot sauce, and no one said a word until the bowls were empty. Because pig's feet weren't just food. They were survival made delicious. 11. Chitlins and cornbread. The smell wasn't for everyone, but for those who grew up with it, it meant family was coming. Cleaning chitlins was an all-day job. Buckets, vinegar, laughter, and patience. By sundown, the pot bubbled slow, seasoned bold with pepper and pride. When the lid finally lifted, the whole block knew dinner was ready. Cornbread waited by the stove, butter melting down its sides. People ate quiet, then laughed loud, because no matter what life threw at them, they could still turn struggle into something worth gathering around. 12. Oxtail soup. Oxtails were the kind of meat you bought when there wasn't much choice, but in the right hands, they became gold. Simmered with onions, carrots, and thyme until the broth turned dark and glossy. Each bite was rich, tender, and slow like a Sunday prayer. Grandmothers called it liquid comfort. It stretched across hours, across stories told over steam and spoons. Oxtail soup was proof that patience could turn the toughest things soft, both in pots and in life. 13. Baked mac and cheese, Sunday style. You could always tell it was Sunday by the smell. Layers of elbow macaroni and real cheese, not powdered, not boxed, stacked high and baked till the edges crisped brown. Kids hovered by the oven door, waiting for the bubbles to break the surface. It came out golden, heavy, perfect. Every forkful pulled a string of cheese that made everyone smile. This wasn't a side dish, it was a celebration. Made with care, served with pride, and always followed by someone saying, "Baby, don't forget to thank God before you eat." 14. Rice and gravy. Sometimes dinner was nothing more than rice and gravy, but somehow it never felt small. You browned flour in bacon grease till it turned nutty and deep, then added water, onion, salt, and heart. That thick, smoky gravy poured over white rice turned pennies into plenty. It tasted like home, even when home was barely holding on. Because when you have flavor, you have hope. 15. Black-eyed peas. A bowl of black-eyed peas was more than food. It was a wish. On New Year's Day, every table had a pot simmering, peas soft and seasoned with ham hock and a pinch of faith. Old folks said each bean stood for a day of good fortune ahead. And even if money was short, you still had luck on your plate. Year after year, families passed the pot around, believing that blessings like beans could multiply. 16. Collard greens. There was always a pot of greens on the back burner. Collards, mustard, or turnip. It didn't matter much. What mattered was the time it took. Washed in the sink, torn by hand, then simmered low and slow with smoked ham hocks or fatback. That pot whispered history. Each leaf carried a story from the fields to the kitchen. When served with cornbread to soak up the pot liquor, it reminded everyone that even the toughest greens could turn tender with enough care. 17. Fried chicken, Sunday's crown. Sunday morning, the air smelled like heaven and hot oil. Aunties lined up bowls of seasoned flour, hands working quick, talking faster, while the skillet hissed its approval. The chicken came out golden, crisp outside, juicy inside. Each piece passed around like treasure. Nobody spoke until the crunch broke the silence. Fried chicken wasn't just a meal. It was pride on a plate, a masterpiece built from memory and love. 18. Red beans and rice. Monday meant washing, cleaning, and red beans. A leftover ham bone in the pot, kidney beans soaking overnight, and the whole house filling with the smell of patience. While chores got done and children played outside, that pot worked its magic, slow and sure. By dinner, it was thick, smoky, perfect. Served over rice that stretched to feed a crowd. A working family's miracle, made one spoon at a time. 19. Cornbread and molasses. Sometimes dessert came cheap, but tasted rich. A slice of cornbread still warm, drizzled with dark molasses that shined like syrup sunlight. It stuck to your fingers and sweetened your spirit. Simple, humble, unforgettable. It was the kind of sweetness born not from sugar, from survival, and the joy of finding enough. Honey. Smothered pork chops. Meat met gravy, that was love. Pork chops browned in a cast iron pan, drowned in onions, broth, and a touch of flour. Simmered until the sauce thickened, till the bones loosened their hold. Served with rice or mashed potatoes, was the kind of meal that made silence at the table, because good food didn't need conversation. 26. Gumbo. Began in Louisiana. Pot big enough to feed a whole block, filled with shrimp, sausage, chicken, and okra. Every black family had their own version. The heart was always the same. What you have, stir with love, and let time do the rest. As it simmered, stories were told of migration, music, and memories. Gumbo hit the table. It wasn't just food. It was heritage in a bowl. 27. Shrimp and grits. Born on the coastal edges of the Carolinas, this dish turned breakfast into poetry. Me grits, slow cooked till smooth as silk, topped with shrimp sautéed in butter, garlic, and was elegant and earthy all at once. It was elegant and earthy all at once, the kind of meal that softly but stayed with you. Once a fisherman's breakfast, now a symbol of Southern grace. Chicken and dumplings. This was comfort when comfort was needed most. Whole chicken boiled down till tender. More dumplings dropped in, one by one, steam clouding up the windows. Black families gathered close as the broth thickened, filled black families' stomachs and healed hearts. Many, it was the taste of coming home after hard days, the flavor of safety. 29. Jambalaya spices, rice, and soul. That's jambalaya. Born from the crossroads of African, French, and Spanish kitchens, was color, chaos, and joy all in one pot. Rice soaked up every flavor. Cooked sausage, peppers, tomatoes. The aroma carried out to the street. Wasn't fancy, but it was fearless. Jambalaya didn't whisper. It sang. 30. Catfish, stewed down by the rivers of Georgia and Alabama. Fish stew was supper for the black working class. Fish, tomatoes, onions, potatoes, boiled slow till everything softened into one story. Wasn't pretty, but it was honest. Served with white bread or rice, tasted like home. The South itself. Rough, rich, and real. 31. Smothered chicken and rice. In city kitchens that were smaller but busier, cooks turned Southern tradition into Northern comfort. Chicken browned in flour, onions sizzling in hot oil, and simmered slow under a blanket of gravy. It was the same smell that once filled country kitchens, now drifting through apartment hallways in Chicago and Detroit. Taste of home carried hundreds of miles north. 32. Barbecue ribs, urban style. South, barbecue was a pit in the ground. In the city, it became a back alley art form. Drums cut into grills, smoke rising between brick walls, ribs brushed with homemade sauce, sweet, smoky, defiant. It wasn't just food, it was celebration. A way for New City families to claim space. Say, we're here and we belong. Sound of laughter, Motown on the radio, smell of ribs, that was the soundtrack of summer. 33. Chicken livers and onions. Cuts, rich flavor. The Great Migration kitchens, nothing was wasted. Chicken livers dredged in flour, fried crisp, and topped with caramelized onions that softened every bite. It was the food of working people. Factory shifts, night trains, church mornings. Taste of dignity in the middle of long, hard days. 4. Collard greens with smoked turkey. Ham hocks got too expensive up north, folks adapted, switched to smoked turkey wings and necks. Flavor stayed deep, smoky, and soulful. Greens still simmered for hours, served beside cornbread, reminded everyone where they came from. It was survival made modern. Story of change that never lost its roots. 25. Meatloaf and mashed potatoes. The 1950s, soul food met city living. Loaf became the new Sunday roast. Ground beef, breadcrumbs, onions, and ketchup glaze. Served with creamy mashed potatoes and gravy, it was both Southern and American, both humble and proud. In those tiny kitchens, others remade tradition. From those plates came strength, kind that built generations. 36. Church fried fish. Saturday night meant cleaning the church. Sunday after service meant frying fish. Smell of cornmeal and grease filled the fellowship hall. Catfish, perch, or whiting, laid out on brown paper, each piece golden and crisp, still sizzling. Elders worked the fryers while children set out plates. Money from those plates went back into the church, helping families, funding bus rides, keeping faith alive. Fried fish wasn't just a meal, it was a mission. Fed bodies, yes, but also movements, because even revolutions need something to eat. 37. Collard greens and hot sauce at the protest table. During marches and sit-ins, food became a quiet form of courage. Volunteers packed collard greens, cornbread, and boiled eggs, tin pans, and brown paper bags. Protesters returned tired and tear-gassed. Meals waited. Warm, spicy, healing. Every bite carried purpose. Greens weren't just seasoned with salt and smoke, they were seasoned with strength. And in the soft hum of community kitchens, you could hear freedom simmering. 38. Sweet potato pie, the victory slice. In the homes of civil rights leaders, was always a sweet potato pie cooling by the window. It was the dessert that followed long meetings and hard days. Taste of hope baked in flaky crust. Victories came, no matter how small. Pie became a celebration. Slice for everyone. Reminded people that joy was still possible. Even in struggle, sweetness had its place. 39. Fried okra. Some called it poor man's snack. Fried okra was golden armor for the spirit. Roasted in cornmeal, kissed by oil, which bite crisp outside, soft inside. Lesson in balance, resilience, and pride. Traveled from front porches to Freedom Rider lunchboxes. In bus stations and jail cells, memory of that taste carried people through. Food was faith. Okra was courage in a paper bag. 40. Chicken and waffles, Harlem's heartbeat. The 1960s, soul food took root in Harlem, and one dish became its anthem: chicken and waffles. Crispy fried chicken beside sweet golden waffles, drizzled with syrup and butter. In jazz clubs where nights ran long, was breakfast and dinner meeting in the middle. Dish that said, "We made it." Smoky rooms where music and struggle mixed, meal symbolized arrival. Black excellence served hot with soul. By now, soul food had left the kitchens of the South, entered the heartbeat of American cities. It was no longer just survival. It was celebration. Every dish became a declaration. We're still here. Have endured. We will keep seasoning tomorrow with the flavor of our ancestors. 41. Soul food platter. The mid-1970s, soul food hit the menu boards. Collard greens, fried chicken, mac and cheese, yams, and cornbread. All on one plate, steaming under diner lights. In places like Harlem, Chicago, and Atlanta, those plates weren't just meals, they were memory collections. But order your grandmother, you guess, cooking for $3.99, and sit next to a stranger who felt like family. Soul food platter turned struggle into style. Made heritage a business that fed both stomach and spirit. 42. Baked spaghetti with cheese. As families grew and tastes shifted, traditions met new flavors. Spaghetti, layered with ground beef, sharp cheddar, and southern seasoning, became a weeknight favorite. It was an African-American spin on an Italian classic, born from creativity and necessity. Easy to make, hard to forget. Every bite said, "This is our version of comfort." 43. Turkey wings and gravy. The 1980s, many families looked for healthier cuts, but flavor never left. Turkey wings braised in brown gravy became a Sunday staple. Hear the oven door close and the radio play Luther Vandross or Aretha. Smell that slow roast fill every room. It was still soul food, just updated for new times. Tender, simple, and wrapped in nostalgia. 44. Cornbread dressing. Every holiday table still had one bowl that could quiet a room. Bread dressing. Crumbled bread mixed with onions, celery, broth, and a touch of sage. Until golden, soft in the middle, crisp on top. It was more than a side dish. It was heritage passed down in measuring cups and memory. And as families moved apart, the recipe never changed. It was the flavor of together again. 55. Fried green tomatoes. The 1990s, Hollywood discovered what Black grandmothers had known for a century. Fried green tomatoes, sliced, dipped in cornmeal, and fried until golden. Looked simple on camera, but they tasted like home on screen. The movie made it famous, but the flavor was ours long before the credits rolled. Crunchy, tart, and timeless. As soul food entered mainstream America, carried the memory of every kitchen that came before. Stood for identity, for resilience, for joy born from hard days. From grease-stained aprons to restaurant menus, from church fundraisers to TV screens, soul food had arrived. His heart remained the same. Story told with spoons and love. 46. Vegan collard greens. In today's kitchens, the recipes still start the same way. Big pot, a handful of greens, a memory of someone stirring slow. Now, some cooks trade ham hocks for olive oil and season with smoked paprika instead of pork. Flavors still deep. the story still sacred. It's not about changing tradition, it's about keeping it alive in new hands, rooted in love, still feeding the soul. 47. Air-fried catfish. World got busier and kitchens smaller. The craving for that golden crunch never faded. So the air fryer joined the family. Modern, fast, yet somehow still familiar. Catfish coated in seasoned cornmeal, crisp without grease, served with hot sauce and memory. It's the 21st century taste of yesterday. 48. Sweet potato hash with greens. Chefs started reimagining the old ways, combining yams, kale, and onions into colorful, healthy plates. It's soul food reborn. It's fried, more fresh, but just as flavorful. It's what happens when the grandchildren of the South are passed into the future. Remix of heritage, all sung in the same key. 49. Black-eyed pea burgers. Somewhere in Atlanta or Brooklyn, food truck serves black-eyed pea burgers on whole grain buns. Spicy, hearty, and proudly called soul on a roll. It's innovation with intention, being that legacy doesn't mean staying the same, it means carrying the flavor forward, no matter what form it takes. 50. Family reunion plates. Then, there's the one meal that never changes. Her plates heavy with fried chicken, greens, mac and cheese, and peach cobbler. Music in the park, kids running, elders watching. Food still tastes like faith. Everything they worked for still being shared. This is where it all comes full circle. Story of a people told in flavors, laughter, in love. From the fields to the freeways, from one-room kitchens to Michelin restaurants, spirit of soul food endures. It's not just what we eat, it's who we are. Legacy of strength made from scarcity. Tradition that turned pain into flavor and survival into celebration. As pots still simmer and tables still fill, story continues. Every bite, every recipe, every prayer before a meal. Because soul food was never just dinner. Was, and still is, flavor of freedom. This story moved you, share it, as our history deserves to be remembered. Plate, one story, one generation at a time. Don't let these recipes fade into silence. Keep the legacy alive. Subscribe and uncover the next forgotten chapter with us. Every dish you've seen was born from resilience. Every meal, a prayer. If you believe those voices still matter, join us. There's more history waiting to be served. Oh, pull up a chair. Because here on Power of History, every bite tells a story worth remembering. This is more than food. It's the flavor of freedom. This story isn't over yet. Don't just watch history. Keep it alive. Subscribe to Power of History. 21. Candied yams. The scent alone could pull everyone to the kitchen. Thick slices of sweet potato, bathed in butter, sugar, and cinnamon, baked until caramel bubbled at the edges. Each bite was sunshine. Soft, golden, healing. It wasn't just dessert, it was comfort. A sweet reminder that joy could survive even the hardest years. Candied yams told children, life can be bitter, but you can still make it sweet. 22. Turkey necks and rice. On nights when the cupboards were bare, there was always a way to make something from nothing. Turkey necks simmered for hours until the meat slipped off the bone, mixed with white rice that soaked up every drop of flavor. It was the taste of resourcefulness, proof that love could turn even the simplest pot into something that fed both body and soul. 23. Lima beans and smoked sausage. A pot of lima beans could fill a house with peace. Cooked slow with smoked sausage, garlic, and onion, they were creamy, rich, and heavy with nostalgia. It was a meal that stretched through generations, the kind of food that made people linger at the table just to talk a little longer. Because sometimes the conversation was the real feast. 24. baked ham with pineapple glaze. For holidays and homecomings, the oven carried a glow of its own. A glazed ham shimmered under a crown of pineapples and cherries, its sweetness mixing with smoke and memory. It wasn't an everyday meal. It was a celebration on a plate. Every slice meant family was together again. And for a moment, the past didn't hurt so much. 25. Peach cobbler. And finally, dessert for the soul. Fresh peaches, sugar, and butter tucked beneath a golden crust. You'd hear it bubbling in the oven long before you saw it. Served warm with cream or nothing at all, it made the room quiet with gratitude. Because peach cobbler wasn't just a recipe, it was a legacy. The sweet ending to a long story of strength, survival, and love.